So this is the last edition of the diagnosis of the Fleet Street Media, the Fleet Street Press of Tuesday, the 25th of August, 2020. This one is going to be mainly dedicated to the fact that today is the 25th of August, 2020. And this is the exact date, 25th of August. Only the difference is the day. In 2016, the 25th of August was a Thursday. So 4 years later, it is a Tuesday. Apart from that, everything else is correct. The other thing to say about 25th of August is that the newspapers which are going to publish some ritual, controversial comments about the Notting Hill Carnival, which is coming next weekend, last weekend of August, are going to peripherally mention Alex Pascal or Alex Pascal. However you pronounce it, Alex Pascal is somebody that has been featuring in and around the Notting Hill Carnival for a very long time, in fact, from the beginning. We shall talk about Alex Pascal at length another time. This one is just to say that the profile of him, or the entry on Alex Pascal, that I retrieved earlier this evening from the internet, the Wikipedia entry on Alex Pascal that I retrieved a few hours ago, does not mention the word race, racism, or racist. That is very significant. Although Pascal has been known to me only from the 1970s, but Pascal's life in Britain has been taken up by involuntary battles and fights against racism. There is, of course, a series of contradictory episodes in his life, including the fact that he actually presented Black Londoners or Black London, whatever the time it was, on BBC Radio London. And I appeared a number of times, quite apart from the fact that I contributed on the phone from the distance in Tower Hamlets. And Alex Pascal and I have had meetings, very historic meetings, several times, including in 1981. The meeting in 1981 that took place during the weekend and held in Birmingham. And it was attended by the longest possible list of recognized race-related persons or personnel, including a young Diane Abbott. In 1981, she was still years away from being launched as the jumper wearer for the black sections. And the keynote speakers were Muhammad Haque and probably Alex Pascal. I'm sure he was there. Alex Pascal, Muhammad Haque, and a man called Tasadduq Ahmed, and a man called Mike Phillips, Dr. Mike Phillips, Professor Mike Phillips, whatever. Now, Mike Phillips, just as a note in context, is an older brother of Trevor Terrible Phillips. And Mike Phillips is not anywhere near as bad in serving the racists against the black community. So Mike Phillips is still, I think, still not serving the racists in a brazen way that Trevor Terrible Phillips has been doing. But that's such a coincidental note for those who don't know and wouldn't know these connections. And the fact that I was the keynote speaker at the UK-wide conference of Black, quote, activists and anti-racists in 1981 is probably something that is hardly known in the community in East London. And that shows that the claim that has been being made by some fraudsters about there being a Battle of Brick Lane is to be examined very seriously. There was no Battle of Brick Lane, and if there were any battles, I would have been aware of those battles against racism. And from 1981 to now, which is what, 39 years, 81, 91, 2001, 11, and this is 2020. For 39 years, I have been continuing the battle that I outlined and spoke to and about in 1981 in Birmingham at that conference. And I have not gone on to become an MP, and I have not gone on to become a member of parliament or member of the cabinet or whatever. But I had absolutely no shortage of suggestions and offers. And I refused to play ball to the game and the planners who would want to use me to promote the status quo of racism and racist complacency. So I gave up all these opportunities, which were not easy things to give up, but I had to choose every time. Every year, I've had a choice to collude with the criminals and violators or to challenge them on the evidence, hold them to account. And there has been no difficulty morally, ethically, evidentially in challenging the wrongdoers, no matter what background, no matter what ethnicity, no matter what gender, no matter what nationality. So this continuing battle is the battle that I will be updating on next week when the Notting Hill Carnival is ritualistically kind of covered and covered up. Remember, the Notting Hill Carnival began as part of the protest against racism, actual individual personal racism by people in the police and people in the prosecution services, the Crown Prosecution Service. The Crown Prosecution Service personnel decided to prosecute 9 mainly Caribbean black people for standing up for basic civil liberties and civil rights. And I'm going to ask Keir Starmer, has he got anything to say about those people who prosecuted the Notting Hill 9 in 1970? He has to have a say, even though he was probably an infant, but the point is that he later became the DPP. and the remit of the DPP and the relationship between the DPP and the police and the powers that be and the various connections between the forces that keep the pressure on Black people, those are very much relevant to the work of a leader of the opposition, leader of the Labour Party. And Keir Starmer has a lot of questions to answer on that one. And I shall be putting the questions to him on air, online, and by email and other communications. And the reason I'm talking about this is because the extension of the permanent ban or the ban on eviction proceedings, the extension up to another 3 weeks, up to the 20th of September, has been reported in a kind of crass, ignorant, irresponsible way by most of the, quote, mainstream outlets, which don't have any original piece or content in there. I'm talking about Diagnosing the media. And the media of Tuesday didn't have anything really. The only thing that is tokenistically in terms of space and in terms of the comment and in terms of the vigor and the rigor of comment or political sub-analysis that appears in The Guardian doesn't go anywhere, because The Guardian is a completely irrelevant publication in terms of relating rigorously and vigorously to the actual lives of people that are affected by these draconian and antisocial, illegal, unconstitutional, undemocratic, anti-societal, anti-human rights measures. And again, Keir Starmer has a lot of questions to answer. And until he answers, and until there is an answer by the Labour Party opposition, I shall be, of course, continuing the daily update and analysis, and also the need and the demand for answers will prevail based on the situation facing millions of people who are disenfranchised of their rights at various levels. Many people in this country right now, white people, indigenous people that are supposedly being protected by Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage and other fruitcakes, many of these people are starving right now across the country because they are in low income, they are in poor health, and they are in all kinds of hardships caused by the state that is supposed to be giving them a human rights kind of solution and service, meeting their basic human needs. So Keir Starmer has a lot of questions to answer about poverty created and perpetuated by the Labour card-carrying councillors. Now, this is the kind of document that I shall be reading parts of. The document is taken from the communications that I sent to Neom Council in August 2016. And in the communications, I go into details about their lying, the Neom Council's employees lying. And those liars are very much in post as we speak 4 years later. And so what is the difference? The question may arise, what is the difference? Or what difference did my activities questioning at the time 4 years ago make away from the corruption and the criminality being perpetrated by Niyam Council. Now, this is the claim in the High Court, and the claimant's communication. And I am talking to a Niyam Council employee in the benefits section, so called, and I sent this at 14:25 hours UK time on Tuesday, the 30th of August. But in the body of the communication, I refer to Thursday, the 25th of August. And I shall be reading some of this. And it is typical of my communications, standard practice that I have been kind of advocating for a very long time. I have created a unique constitutional law kind of archive and standard and kind of unique approach to diagnosing the criminals employed as council court officers. So I said that the many communications that these liars denied receipt of, I'm just talking about those. And then I say, a master in the Queen's Bench Division in the High Court is on the record as having expressed sympathy for what I have been caused by the particular defendant's misconduct. That is my position against the misconduct. I'm not going to let that defendant, I name somebody, so I'm not naming this one here, but they are named, or anyone else behave in a similar way again. Here is what I have asked Niyam Council to do, and it can choose to continue, to ignore it, or address it and start paying whatever is due and whatever it has obstructed. So the first one is I gave my details to the Niyam Council as an applicant. This is an empirical evidence item. And then this person, it's a female, acknowledged that over the phone when I spoke to her the first time. So I go on. So what is not acceptable with that particular information? What is the proof that I have to provide? The proof being that they are lying about receiving the proof already, which I detail in that communication. What is the definition of that proof? What law? And then I break down the various legal kind of components. That is statutory instrument, or case law. These are three general divisions. Does require me to do extra work and recreate the office that I was working in all those years ago when I got the national insurance number. And I refer to the office that was based in the Great Portland Street in London, where I was working. And most of the staff were not around. The people there that were there in all these 8 years ago are no longer there. That's what I'm saying. So what they're asking for is proof of my work and working all those years previously. And I was saying that the place I was working in Great Portland Street in London W1 no longer was being used for that purpose. It was an accountancy office. And I was working in a chartered accountant's office. So what am I supposed to create again and why? So I asked them. And then I said, by why I am stressing as under what legal compulsion. And then the second one I say, I totally and utterly reject the serial lies that Newham Council has perpetrated by the dodgily behaving Dorcas, whatever the name, second name here, or by anyone else who has been participating in the lying to the effect that I have not signed the forms. Now, I am a constitutional law activist, and I'm a lawyer who has defeated most barristers and solicitors that I have ever had to encounter and confront. And they are accusing me of not having signed a form. And I have created, devised, authored hundreds of forms in my time. So they're saying that I didn't sign the form. And the evidence, actually, the bundle contains my signed evidence. So when I say that I'm doing an empirical investigation into the criminality of Newham Council as fronted by Roxana Fias, I mean this literally. And I'm giving this as a sample. And I'm at the front line of the confrontation with the criminals in control of the councils. Criminals like those fronting the Newham Council currently, or the criminals that were fronting the Newham Council before Roxana Fias became the main fronter. And as I said before, the previous fronter, Robin Wales, was in place for 16 years. And I told him on live program, although it was a shorter program than the essential evidence that I had to deliver against his behavior would take. But the substance was that he was exposed on that program, even though it was a short program. Because my essential challenge to Robin Wales on that program on the 14th of March 2018 was that he chose to go along with and carry on implementing the policies of the conservatives in depriving people of housing. And he was blaming the conservatives, and especially the right to buy, as introduced by Margaret Thatcher. And I said on the program, and I say here again, I'm not a supporter of the conservatives. I have never supported the conservatives as far as I can see on anything. But that does not mean that I shall not give them the benefit of the doubt on objective test. The fact that I'm not a conservative doesn't mean that I will not recognize them when their behavior warrants that particular evidential recognition. So I said to Robin Wales that he could not be allowed to blame the conservatives for his failures. And so I'm saying to Roxana Fias that she cannot blame Robin Wales for her failures. And this letter is typical of my letters. Anyone who has read my communication and correspondence would know that the standard is higher than Macaulay's. I mean, Macaulay in this situation would not be able to write one letter that I'm having to write every day, many letters every day. Thomas Babington Macaulay was a member of the House of Peers, and he was an overpaid, over-remunerated, over-rewarded member of the corruptocracy and the racistocracy. And nor is Keir Starmer able to compose one letter in his entire lifetime that I'm having to write every day to expose the crooks in the councils. And I say this on the record that is why I say that my work is more important than a post or a token kind of honor that I could easily be lumbered with. And my work is not about me. Of course, I am at the front line experiencing the worst of the obstructions and denials and lying. But if I don't experience the worst of these, I would never know just how bad they are. Anyone who is still not clear needs to replay this particular bit. I am experiencing it. I'm not getting it from third, second, or fourth hand. I'm experiencing the criminals' perpetrations in the criminally controlled, criminally operated local councils. And I would say to the newspapers, Fleet Street newspapers of Tuesday, 25th of August 2020, that have blamed Jeremy Corbyn for losing the election because he was complaining about various things, minor things like riding on the bus and whatever other peripheral things. I would say to those that if they really genuinely cared about the people, and they did so in the context of Jeremy Corbyn's role as the leader, they would have looked at the councils and how throughout England, and I'm not including Wales, as I said before, Wales is racistly used as an addendum by the Englishistic racists who control the language and control the vocabulary and control the system. So Corbyn knowingly has refused to raise the issue of council corruption. To most people, I am sure Corbyn included, council corruption is a minor thing, it's a minority aspect of council's behavior. And I'm saying to Corbyn and to those who think like him that that is not the case. Local councils are predominantly engaged in corruption and lying. And I connect that with the evidence of most local communities and areas where the main social care and other services are supposed to be delivered via and by these councils have been perpetually condemned to remain in poverty and deprivation. That cannot be the result of an intelligent, dedicated, anti-poverty and anti-hunger group of people running the council. It can only be caused by those who want the status quo, poverty, deprivation to remain perpetually plaguing the communities in Tower Hamlets, in Newham, and in other places. So what I'm talking about in terms of encountering the liars in Newham Council is empirical evidence, investigation. And I was typing a letter from a kind of internet cafe about 2 years ago. And I don't know this woman, but I knew her face, but I never had any conversation with her. I actually had seen her face over decades, but I never spoke to her. She's a white person and she introduced herself to me as being a German, but she has been living in East London for decades. So she told me something about John Biggs. And if she's watching, she knows who she is. And I'm not naming her out of kindness and courtesy. Now, she told me unique, insightful information about Biggs. I leave it there to protect that woman. But essentially, what she said only reinforced my evidence. And the evidence was, and I shall be running this in subsequent editions with photographs, with accounts and other communications and evidence, that John Biggs was lying to me about 10 separate times. John Biggs was lying. Anyone who has complained that I have been calling John Biggs a liar too many times needs to check his record. I am not making up anything. I'm not exaggerating anything. John Beeks is a proven liar on the record. And it matters because one woman, a Bangladeshi woman, died in Bangladesh after being condemned to be trapped there out of her home in London. And she was condemned to be trapped there out of her home in London because Tower Hamlets Council chose to ignore her rights and her plight. A disabled woman, a woman with learning difficulties, but at the same time a woman with absolute clear kindness in her soul and heart, was condemned to die after being trapped in Bangladesh for 15 years. And she was conned. She was conned out of her home in Tower Hamlets by a family member. And because of legal process and due process, the other particular members and relations approached the council to do the right thing instead of anyone flying there and doing a physical kind of fight or something. If that happened by chance. But as far as my knowledge of the case was concerned, all the Bangladeshi councillors concerned were made aware of Lutfur Rahman's behavior, because when Lutfur Rahman became mayor, he was in a position to put an end to the sufferings and help the woman get back to London. And Lutfur Rahman refused to even hear the story. Although he knew the story, but he refused to hear the story A to Z. And what Lutfur Rahman did, John Beeks did exactly the same way. So these are people that are not serving the community, whatever the race. They are lying. And Lutfur Rahman had about 20 liars behind him, a line of 20 liars lying for Lutfur Rahman in order to cover up Lutfur Rahman's lying about denying the service of the council to some desperately in need of help people. Now the pictures of that woman between roughly the time when she was first able to come to UK to join her family, her parents, and the years before she eventually succumbed to the sufferings and stress and the violations of her rights that she went through, the pictures would make the case. If my summary in any way has not. The picture would show that a very ordinary looking, healthy looking, pleasant looking person was looking like they were in a concentration camp. And that was caused by John Beeks. And that was caused by Lutfur Rahman. And that was caused in Tower Hamlets and from Tower Hamlets Council. And the role of the judicial system, the court system, the High Court, that woman featured in a High Court case, but I shall discuss the details of that case in a whole piece, whole report on its own, because the complexity and the details are very important to be clearly set out. And that is the kind of evidence real evidence, empirical evidence, not some kind of hearsay or some kind of interpretation, but actual front line, that I base my analysis, my findings, my comments about the courts, about the councils, about the elected politicals and the ministers and whatever. I shall never waver from the commitment that I always have had to tell the truth. And I have been doing it long before Corbyn entered politics, because I've been doing it for the many, spontaneously, many of the world, not just one ethnicity or one group. And that is the commitment that finds wrongdoings every day. And if I don't point this out, the colluders and the careerists will not. So therefore, somebody has to. One former councillor in Tower Hamlets just happens to be a Bangladeshi, and his name is Doros Ullah. Anyone watching this may know Doros Ullah. Doros Ullah, in about 2 years ago, he, about this time, 2 years ago, sent an email that I did not have any reason to anticipate or expect from him, because I've never had any correspondence with Doros Ullah in any significant way in my time. And even when he was a councillor, while I was in the thick of the campaign against the Crossrail hole, and he was one of the people visiting Turon Mia's shop as part of their daily monitoring exercise on behalf of the Labour-controlled Towners Council as to what the Khoodeelaar campaign was doing on that day. So Doros Ullah wrote a very humble and very kind of, how shall I say, ingratiating letter to me 2 years ago. And he, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I can check and I shall update on that. And he pleaded with me in that email. I'm saying pleaded. If anyone disagrees with the use of the word pleading or pleaded, they can tell me, because he was pleading. And what he was saying, this Doros Ullah, in his email, was that he would be grateful if I would appear on his apparently television program called Community Issues, that he was doing from a ethnicity-linked kind of outlet. And what Doros Ullah was saying to me was absolutely unbelievable. Okay, now this was not 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Let me just see what. Yes, now this is 4 years ago actually. Doros Ullah, 4 years ago on this day, 25th of August 2016. And that letter, that email, I shall definitely be able to read. And what Doros Ullah said to me was that he would be grateful if I would agree. Yes. to appear. So I wasn't sure what he wanted me to do because I had not sought nor craved or needed to appear on any program fronted by him or anybody else in the community's name or in the community, or for that matter, in any of the mainstream, BBC or Channel 4 or whatever. I have had more than enough appearances on television, and I have been doing the campaigns, despite the fact that there have been constant temptations for me to take part in paid for whatever. So the Rasulullah wrote to me on the 25th of August for the, yes, right. This is the email that the Rasulullah sent to me at 1953 hours local time on the 25th of August 2016. I was saying 2 years ago before I could check the date. And what the Rasulullah said 4 years ago, today, 25th of August 2016, is he misspells my name, but that is just a fact that I'm pointing out. I'm not condemning him for that, just literally. Dear Muhammad Haque Baisab. Baisab is a Sylheti word. It says older brother, elder brother with respect. So he says, Dear Muhammad Haque Baisab, I would like to invite you to my program as a guest on Tuesday, 30th of August 2016 at 7 p.m. for 8 p.m. start. We will be covering a range of issues, including Boishaki Mela, Kobi Nazrul Center, Tower Hamlets, playing fields, etc. And would there is a B missing, so I'd say it's a sick. Grateful for your contribution as a panel member. Please kindly confirm. Please kindly confirm. The Rasulullah is anxious to make sure that he comes across as respectful towards me in that email. Please kindly confirm your attendance by way of an email, or you may contact me on my mobile, which then he mentions his mobile number. I look forward to hearing from you. Yours sincerely, Dorasullah, presenter of Community Issues Program. I have never in my whole life asked any presenter or owner of any outlet anywhere to give me a slot or a panel position. The only places I have been communicating to with a demand for a place and a say have been the mainstream in the British media, where I have had reason to demand a place and a say to have a say against racism. Not the same thing at all. But this letter, this email was followed by me sending a lot of communications to the Rasulullah, trying to establish what he was actually expecting me to say, and what was the agenda, and what was the narrative. So I spent a lot of time considering his request and the particular relevance that anything I might say would have to the people who are responsible for various wrongdoings. And I considered all of that, and I asked him to meet me prior to the event, either on the day or a day before. So I had a meeting with him at a location in Crisp Street Market. But I found that the Rasulullah was being unable to concentrate on sitting down with me and talking in response to my questions. He kept having a reason to disappear for a few minutes and then come back again. I'm saying this on the record. If the Rasulullah disputes this, he must put this in writing to me. He knows the email address and he knows how to contact me. Because this request by the Rasulullah was followed later by a series of criminal untruths uttered by somebody that the Rasulullah was close to at that time. I don't know what his relationship is now or has been since. And the liar then had the audacity to send me a troll and accuse me of all things that I was critical of Bangladeshi media outlets because I had not been invited. Now, I am the person who is not interested in being invited. I fight invitations because I know that those who crave invitations are actually not able to present the truthful position in defense of the community. So that liar has, currently I have been given to understand that that liar asked some other people as to whether he should take me on. Now I am saying this on the record that I have no agenda against anyone who is running any show or any program. That is their business. The only small thing that I ask them to do is not to sell the community out, not to lie about the community, and not to lie to the community, and not to act as agents and surrogates and stooges for interests that are nothing to do with the UK Bangladeshi community in this context. Because the Bangladeshis deserve the truth. And as I said last time, the first solution robbery that took place in 2007 of the money that had been sent or supposedly sent to the relatives of hardworking, low-income Bangladeshi migrants in this country. Those people who have been robbed since 2007, most of those people haven't got their money back. And I am absolutely clear that they deserve their money back. And I shall do my level best to raise the issue within the law, not trying to damage somebody's reputation because they have pointed out some critical truth. So the liar who has been conspiring to find a way to justify his lying about my needing to appear on programs or needing a platform needs to know that he can spend the rest of his natural life counting the number of times that I have been turning down bigger opportunities and platforms than he or anyone he knows will ever have the privilege to know. I have been turning down offers to become ministers in governments, not once, several times. I have turned down offers to become executives in media outfits, both in Bangladesh and in the international arena. So that liar needs to apologize to me and settle the matter with me by an apology. That would be okay. I have no agenda against him, but he has no right to lie about me. I am the only one who doesn't do anything to get a chair or a platform. For a start, I don't need those. And secondly, my life's purpose is to help the community and help those who are being obstructed and denied of their rights, no matter what their background, human beings. And I care very much to create a culture in our community that actually respects lives of animals, lives of the suffering people, and respects the environment, the planet, and humanity. So my agenda is not against that liar, I'm saying that again, or against any of the other liars. They are liars, but I'm not spiteful, I'm not poisonous, and I'm not dedicated to destroy them. They may be motivated to destroy other people individually, but I am not. My purpose is to educate. And I have been doing this, all my active campaigning projects and programs are about that. And what I'm saying is that on the 25th of August 2016, the Rasulullah sent me that ingratiating letter, email, after consulting X or Y, Z. And he would not have sent me that without the go-ahead and agreement of other people. I didn't ask the Rasulullah to send me that. And when I received that, I responded to the Rasulullah's request in the kindest possible way, in the most constructive way. My record speaks for itself. I don't say things without substantiation. And I would not go and invent something against that liar or any other liar because they are liars and they've lied against me. I'd only say anything about them if that is true. And as I said, my DNA is not full of poison. I don't go thinking about how to destroy people. Educate, enlighten, end the darkness and confusion and ignorance. The people of Bangladesh, in Bangladesh, are suffering injustice at every level. And that has been the case for all the time. Since Maulana Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani wrote his news magazine called Haque, the truthful word or the truth, the need for telling the truth to defend the whole of the Bangladeshi people in that context of Bangladesh, the need has been increasing. And that means that I am saying that no matter what name the party in power has been, whatever the name is, it has not made the lives of the people better. And that needs to be changed. Bangladeshi people deserve real independence, and they deserve to taste the freedom and liberty that was promised to them whenever they were told about Ayub Khan in the 1960s. I demonstrated against Ayub Khan from the day one until the day he resigned. How many people the Rasulullah knows that have done that? I don't think he knows a single one. Because when I opposed Ayub Khan's declaration of martial law on the 28th of October, 1958, the entire country was absolutely stunned into silence and silent admiration of Ayub Khan. East and West Pakistan at the time in 1958. Where was the Rasulullah in 1958? I don't know. But that is what I do. I considered Ayub Khan's military regime and the military agenda inconsistent with the needs of democracy. And so I opposed it. It didn't matter whether I upset my entire village, which I did. All the elders were opposed to me, including some people who were in the military. They were against me because I dared to challenge the martial law. And I said I would do that because that is my duty to the people, my conscience. And so therefore, any liar who fantasizes that they would create a story about me, kind of being selfish or personally motivated or greedy, will waste their time. I am the person who, without any plan, quite without any plan, found myself in what turned out to be a debate with Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. I've spoken about that before, and I'm speaking about this now just to make sure. I debated Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. There is nobody else in the whole subcontinent who did that. I debated Bhutto and I put to him 1, 2, 9 questions in a row. And the eventual outcome of that was that Bhutto burst into tears and he walked out of the stage at the Institute of Engineers in Dhaka. And he went to his Intercontinental Hotel and he flew out of then East Pakistan, because this was happening in the 1960s, and he went back to then West Pakistan. So any liar who fantasizes to create a story about me will be spending the rest of their lives looking for ways to find a narrative. There is no chance. There is no chance. The chance would be increased if they cooperated with the cause of telling the truth, serving the community, and opposing crooks and liars. I mean, that particular liar has had a do with another liar. And I'm not naming that liar because the families are going to be in danger of being identified. That's the only reason I'm not naming that liar, the other liar. Too many liars are peddling packages of lies on behalf of Bangladesh-based politicals. It doesn't matter which political party or political interest. Bangladesh-based politicals may be working for other countries, but essentially what they're doing is betraying the needs of the people of Bangladesh in Bangladesh on the mainland, and Bangladeshi people in the various international countries, including the UK, where the Bangladeshis came, forced out of their homes by poverty and hunger and lack of security. So anyone who claims to be concerned about community issues, a most brazenly incompetent phrase that the Rasulullah used, community issues. How useless can you be? I'm not saying the Rasulullah is inherently useless, but that is a useless phrase, community issues. Community issues does not denote, let alone connote, an investigative approach to the crooks and the corruption that is going on at the expense of the community. And so therefore, any fantasist criminal who objects to my investigative campaigning work needs to think why I am doing the investigation. And they will find the answer. Nobody in their ranks is doing the investigation. So somebody has to speak up. As much as I can, I speak for the people, and I'm asking everyone to join with me or anyone else who is actually trying to uncover the various mysteries and secrets and misdeeds being done by people who are robbing and cheating the community and letting the community down. Join the campaigners. That is the answer. That is the solution. And I said to the Rasulullah that on the 25th of August 2016, I took your email in good faith. But you, the Rasulullah, have been a witness to my good faith being misunderstood and misinterpreted by elements that you know. And you owe me an apology, and you owe the community an apology. Because whatever I said in that show and whatever I have said outside of the show, it doesn't matter what the platform is. I have got absolutely no problem with finding platforms because I'm a campaigner. If you understand what that means, it is bigger than any minister, any prime minister included, because the campaign is done totally on ethical, moral principles and to extract justice from the clasps of, on the clutches of unjust people in positions. What I'm doing with Newham Council, what I'm doing with Tar Hamlets Council, what I'm doing with the various other departments and councils in this country, they're all part of the same battle, the campaign. And 25th of August, as I said, the Rasulullah wrote me the email 2016, and I'm asking on the anniversary of that the Rasulullah owes me an apology. If he does a broadcast relating to what I'm saying here, I would be dealing with that broadcast very thoroughly indeed. And I will remind the Rasulullah that he cannot pretend that he knows me 1 week and then he doesn't know me the next week. There is no way that human psychology operates in that way. He either respects me as the respected Muhammad Haque Bhai, or he fakes it. He has to choose what is his identity politically, socially, morally, ethically. If he has got any integrity, he will apologize and he will get the person or persons who have been trolling because I have been opposing the lying by the channels and outlets. They should be retracting and withdrawing their perpetrations. One thing about Ofcom and regulators in this country. One reason that I don't fancy making complaints to racist institutions against Bangladeshis is this. I spend all my time and energy in diagnosing injustice, racist injustice, and injustice by white people against white people. So essentially, I cannot be changing my morality and treating those people who are unjust in other respects as being unbiased judges. So I cannot complain to racists saying this Bangladeshi person or persons are doing wrong. That would discredit the Bangladeshis, which is why I spent 5 years patiently against the biggest outrageous provocations by Lutfur Rahman's lying. I spent 5 years asking him to do the right things. And he and his 20 liars lied to me for 5 years. Now, I could have told Lutfur Rahman, which I did on the last Friday of October 2010, that he was heading for destruction. Now, that was a week after he got elected, first time. And I told him outside the Brick Lane Mosque on the Friday. I said he was heading for doom. It's not my word. It is on film. I was filming him as I was speaking to him. Now, any liar who fancies themselves as accurate forecasters should consider that. I have got all my forecasts. Everything I have said about big or medium-sized events has been proven exactly as I had predicted. This is not some kind of odd one-off incident. So I have been raising funds for Bangladesh, millions of pounds. It's on the records. I am the one who went to 10 Downing Street on the 4th of May, 1991. It was me, not the liar or the liars. I went there and I demanded that the Prime Minister at the time, who happened to be John Major, raised the amount of money he had pledged to give to Bangladesh as helping hand in the immediate aftermath of the cyclone that had hit the coastal area, not Sylhet, but coastal areas in southern Bangladesh on the 30th of April, 1991. I am the one who spent the following 2 to 3 years doing other things, but in creating original analysis and advice on flood and how to create an early warning system in areas like Bangladesh. And my communications were sent to the United Nations. So any liar or liars who want to indulge in the tea shop politics and garbage because they think that I have been unfair to them, because they have no clue, must start doing better than saying that I am jealous of them. There is nobody that I'm jealous of. There cannot be, because I have been shunning opportunities, platforms, jobs, and money all my life. So therefore, it's not possible that I have got the weakness that I want to be on that platform. In fact, I wouldn't want to be on most of these platforms where so many liars appear. And some of the key liars know that, because they cannot get me to appear with them. So the community, the Bangladeshis in Bangladesh, deserve a media that tells the truth, whoever the government is. And I don't care who the government is, because I'm not particularly at all motivated about becoming a member of a government or whatever, or prime minister or president. When I was younger, maybe I had been following the narrative of other people. So anyone asked me all those years ago might have heard that I would have wanted to become a kind of post holder, titular president or prime minister, whatever. That was long time ago. My main message from this program, this campaign, is consistent with the Khoodeelaar campaign, consistent with every campaign that I do, that do not think that lying about the people is the same as telling the truth to them. Never think that. And Lutfur Rahman found that out. Lutfur Rahman lied repeatedly, lied to himself about the community, lied to himself about the history of the Eastern, and lied about how kind and tolerant and patient and compassionate I was being by giving him the opportunity. And he repeatedly lied, and I knew that he was lying. He said to Aman Dalby, Aman Dalby is a proven liar. He said to Aman Dalby in front of me that Aman Dalby should sit down with me and deal with whatever I had been asking them to deal with. Now that was a lie, because Aman Dalby couldn't be more inappropriate, and Lutfur could not be more contemptuously and contemptibly ignorant, because it was Lutfur who should have sat down with me and taken the advice that I had given him on the 20th of September 2012 in the basement of what was then the Marco restaurant, which is now gone, and witnessed by Alibor Chowdhury and Muhammad Jubair of the slave channel, which is to be called Sylhet channel. So these are people that I'm naming. And I'm naming because it is the truth. It's not because I'm motivated against any of them. I'm saying that the lesson is stop lying. If you are in the position that Lutfur was allowed by the people to be in position of an elected mayor, then the first thing Lutfur should have done, ought to have done, must have done, is to stop lying. Not only did he not stop lying, he began to show such a degree of unreality that there was no other way but for him to be kicked out of that post in that ceremonial, unceremonious way by the election court judge. It didn't have to be that petition. Something else would have happened. If it wasn't that petition, something else would have happened. And the contents of the report that John Ware did on the BBC Panorama may have got some emphasis wrong somewhere. I don't doubt that for a moment, because John Ware is a racist, and John Ware is not very bright, and John Ware was briefed by a lot of criminals from our community who had their own little access to grind against Lutfur Rahman. But essentially, the fact that John Ware did that panorama program against Lutfur Rahman was not the fault of John Ware or the BBC or the white people. It was definitely Lutfur Rahman who brought on that panorama against himself. So despite the deficiencies in the contents of the program, Lutfur Rahman was the one that actually brought it on himself. And his SWP criminals and other so-called leftists. I am a dedicated universal believer in the values of universal social justice, but I never call myself a leftist or an extremist or a revolutionary or any of those fancy things. I don't give myself a tag in those terms. But I say to Lutfur Rahman that his kind of masters, political masters, came from the SWP, and they came from other parts of the corrupt left in Britain that were aligned with the crooks that were fronted by Ken Livingstone while he was two-term mayor and others. Now, Lutfur Rahman still doesn't know the Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets. And the fact that he got in was completely organized by other people. And he took advantage of that. And he then abused his position, and he began to behave as if he was indeed from another planet. And he has set the worst possible example that could be set in Tower Hamlets, because the plight of the Bangladeshis, or the plight of the same group of people coming from the same area who were called other things because of political labeling beforehand, has not been an easy plight. Even now, the racists don't recognize the Bangladeshis as equal human beings. And the ramifications are that the future generations of the Bangladeshi community in this country are going down in terms of morality, in terms of ethics, in terms of the actual fitness to be accepted as equal human beings by dedication, by service, and by character. So anyone who cares about the community would be dedicating themselves to creating an atmosphere to help people get education and help people set up better examples, help people become compassionate, caring, and concerned for the welfare of their whole neighborhood, of their whole community. What we are witnessing in the behavior of the so-called outlets, ethnic outlets, ethnicity-linked outlets and ethnicity-linked politicals like the local councillors is that they become detached from the community and its purpose. Remember, the people from Bangladesh in this country, in the UK, mainly came from Sylhet. And this was a combination of a number of things. And the main central factor, the motivating factor for most people coming here is and remain poverty. Now, of course, people have done a lot of bad things after with their money that they got by coming here because of the exchange rate and some other important issues. They abused the money, built a lot of houses and structures back in Sylhet, which are being left empty or being occupied by other people who are not really doing justice to that. Instead of housing people in need, there are abusers of these buildings, and the money is completely going down the drain. The money that went into building most of these structures has been wasted. And that is part of the reason why we need to create an agenda, an organizational structure everywhere to make use of the economic resources that we have in our villages, in our countries, and if abroad, how we can marshal this income and put it to the best possible use. I mean, currently in Tower Hamlets in Newham and other parts of the UK, the so-called second or third generation Bangladeshis are detached from Bangladeshi communities' values that drove people to come here. And there is something like a revolution that is needed to make these people aware of their roots, their identities, and that would create a balance in their lives, give them equilibrium in their lives. And that cannot happen without them being told the truth about the origins of their community coming from Sylhet and the consequences of poverty and hunger to human life, and how human lives can be destroyed by hunger and poverty and want, and why the Bangladeshis can contribute seriously in showing the way to other Bangladeshis and to other people from other backgrounds as to what can be done by migration not being taken as a completely irreversible way, but it can be reversed, and it can be the experience, the lessons of migration can be put to the best possible use for the future generations. And that is not possible by lying and by praising the government, whatever governmental regime is in Dhaka. Dhaka is completely irrelevant to the plights of the people in the slums and the estates in the UK and in other countries in the world. Most Bangladeshis abroad, now not just in the UK, but they live in many other countries. Most Bangladeshis abroad and internationally are without rada, without any frame of reference, without any recourse to the due process, without any access to justice for abuse they suffer internationally in the hands of the host countries individually and as governments. And the Bangladeshis who are able to have a meal every day now must think about what happened to these Rohingyas, not far from Bangladesh. Rohingyas have been there for hundreds of years, and they have been genocided, and they've been murdered, and they've been raped, and they've been massacred, and they've been accused of being foreigners. If that can happen to the Rohingyas, it can happen to other people. And the Bangladeshis who had to flee to India in 1971 would tell the same story. It's the most unpleasant thing to flee your home and most frightening thing to do, to leave your home. So anyone who sits on the benches in Chicksand Estate or in Shadwell or in Bethnal Green or in parts of Poplar and is aged under 30 or something, and they think that they have the world under their feet, must think about the Rohingyas, must think about the Bangladeshis being abused. There are thousands of Bangladeshi children being exploited abroad, Bangladeshi children being sexually abused abroad, Bangladeshi women being prostituted, sold to prostitution abroad. Where is the outcry? Don't these people matter? Don't they count? And I'm saying to those morons who I understand, have condemned my criticism of them because they say that I'm jealous, that I have not got a platform. They must not commit that mistake. I have platforms, I've had platforms before, long before they were born, biologically born. And therefore, they should actually turn their attention to what is happening to the Bangladeshis. I'm talking about European countries. I'm talking about the countries of the Arabian-speaking world. I'm talking about Bangladeshis in the North American areas and in other smaller countries, smaller numbers, and in African countries, smaller numbers comparatively. But essentially, these are Bangladeshi human beings. Now, who is speaking for them collectively or in any significant way? And I don't see anyone is speaking for them. And I am part of the campaign to end hunger at root. And that includes creating platforms for Bangladeshis internationally to have their rights recognized and their humanity respected and their needs met in a fair and sustainable way. And this is a bigger task than all the venom and all the ambition and the stupidity combined of the little entrepreneurs parading as media personalities in Brick Lane. This is absolutely ridiculous. Look at the plight of the Bangladeshis. Bangladeshis are being dishonored in this country, in Britain. And the dishonor comes from the abuse of position by Lutfur Rahman. No two way about it. That has to be accounted for. Lutfur Rahman has to be held to account to the community why he did that. Because he sat back the battles that we have been fighting here for rights by 100 years. And the councillors who went to jail for lying and defrauding, who told them that that was okay to steal housing rights from Tower Hamlets Council while there were thousands on the waiting list? Who gave them the idea that that was okay? That was never okay. And they have joined the disgracers of the community on the records. Long after they are passed, they pass away. These records will be there. And that is why it matters. There should not be a repetition of this kind of behavior by anyone who becomes a councillor or a politician or an MP or whatever. They have to behave to the standard that is expected by the entire electorate of all backgrounds. In 1921, which is 99 years ago, The popular councillors, who included George Lansbury, who later on went on to become briefly the leader of the Labour Party in Parliament, the popular councillors went to jail. I'm the one who has been talking about them, not a white councillor. And I have been here quite a long time after the popular councillors were in place and in jail. But I'm the one who is talking about them. I have been talking about them for years. The popular councillors were a rare bunch of councillors in all of England. They're all white people. In 1921, there were hardly any Bangladeshis or Pakistanis or Indians or Africans in East London. There were some people from Somalia and Sudan and other places, but the number was significantly insignificant in terms of the overall demography. So it was mainly white people, working class people in East London, that the popular councillors were defending, speaking up for the poor people. And the councillors, in fact, were a cross section of socially kind of affluent people. Many of them were quite well off. One of the links that can be understood as to how well off they were is the American actress now, Angela Lansbury. And she is related to George Lansbury, obviously. So the people were not themselves poor or poor background. Most of them were not poor. And not all of them were kind of categorizable as Labour Party members in the beginning. But most of them were of that orientation, because in 1921, Labour Party was forming, just coming up into a political party and movement. And what the popular councillors did has remained, have become absolutely excellent model for future local councillors and politicians to be guided by. They said, these popular councillors, that we shall not penalize our poor electors under the Tory rule and Tory tax and whatever. We would rather go to jail than raise the tax or whatever. And they did go to jail. This is a stunning example of democracy in action. Absolutely brilliant. And it cannot be more different from what the councillors currently serving their allowances or pocketing their allowances from the town hall based in an area in Poplar. This is absolutely stunning. And I'm saying to everyone that you should join the Khoodeelaar campaign in celebrating the 100th anniversary of the popular councillors going to jail and really making all of Tower Hamlets genuinely, democratically, ethically, morally proud of these public servants, rare number of people that ever came to occupy these elected positions. I'm going to organize a number of things, and I'm going to ask people to support the celebration. It's an educational, learning, and humanitarian kind of thing. It's a very, very multifaceted occasion to celebrate for all of the communities of all backgrounds, and nowhere more fittingly than in Tower Hamlets, and no time more fittingly than at a time when Tower Hamlets Council is made up of crooks and liars and bribers. And that is the point on which we shall be concluding this particular recording, which has been recorded at what time is it now? Midnight 54 into Wednesday, just 6 minutes short of 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 26th of August, 2020. We shall be continuing the series, and we shall be regularizing the schedules in a way that includes some decorations in the background and pictures and multicolored kind of words and letters and lettering. Essentially, the contents remain the same. And the contents, anyone is welcome to refer to the contents, but they must cite clearly the source. And the source is running underneath the frame, and the details are there. The date is there and everything. The date and the time of the recording is there. And until the next time, I say Assalamu alaikum, good morning, and Khuda Hafiz, and stay safe wherever you are, and stay honest, and stay truthful, and stay completely devoid of the temptation to deprive other people of their rights, of their dignity, of their humanity. And please respect the animals. Don't be cruel to animals. Animals have feelings just like human beings. And please remember, animals have been here before human beings were created. So respect them and think of them as to their feelings. And if you do that, you will be doing your little bit to helping the planet stay together, because the planet is going to be exploding as a fireball if we don't stop overheating it by our greedy consumption and carbon and all that. So hopefully we shall be continuing this campaigning mode and narrative in all the programs to come.